tick tock, Mr. Aron Ra. We're going further down the rabbit hole. Tick tock, tick tock. Alright, let's see now.
That's called talking out of your ass. And again, everyone knows how dishonest that is, but that's what all religions do. College and think about what I'm trying to tell them, to engage them. And they have to pay attention because I'm also going to get them to confirm that they understand and accept each premise before we move on to the next one. And they get uncomfortable really fast. If they can't contest any confirmed factual points and still refuse to accept it, then we go no further. Let me give you an example of that. I mean, they have to understand the theory as it is, not the way they want it to be. And one of the first debates I did of this kind, I was going up against somebody who identified as a government scientist. Don't know what the hell that is, but he was also arguing that I use too many big words. Of course, y'all know about my government, so he might be right. He said that evolution was being taught in public schools as the religion of no-godism. And except, of course, he wasn't able to produce one citation from any educational resource to back him up. And he refused to accept the whole list of college and high school textbooks that I presented that all uniformly said that it was, allelic variance in reproductive populations over time in many generations, etc. He just ignores all of that because he doesn't want to believe it. So, having their whole position dependent on every logical fallacy ever listed means they only know how to be wrong. And they're absolutely wrong about absolutely everything relevant to this discussion. They may be perfectly rational, logical people in other avenues, but not when they're talking about religion. In any other application, they know that you can't assert baseless speculation as though it was fact. Because if you call it fact and it's not a fact, that's a lie, and everybody understands that except when they're defending the faith. Likewise, in any other avenue of everyday life, you can't just pretend to know things you don't actually know either. That's called talking out of your ass. And again, everyone knows how dishonest that is, but that's what all religions do. That's all theology is. And I want everybody to understand, theology is just talking out of your ass about shit you don't know. I know there's a whole lot of professional theologians that will take issue with that. Good, bring it. Remember, ignorance is phonetically pronounced ignorance. It isn't just what you don't know, it's what you won't know, what you refuse to acknowledge or understand. That's why I have to ask them questions to get their answers, because they're not going to accept my answers.
Voila! Sorry, that's backwards, my mistake. Yeah. But still, Mr. Aron Ra, Mr. Hardy Ha. What was my first thing I sent? He can't even keep track of what I told him in emails. He must have got mixed up with the other person. He did get mixed up with the other person. But he's neglecting the question that he's answering in this video. Well, on a separate subject. Not in its whole entirety. Because in the email, I stated, I have the answer you are looking for about the question. Aron Ra stated, Why believers hate reality so much as you've been trying to figure it out for over 20 years? I believe I have the answer. That was the main thing that I was going to give to him. TikTok down the rabbit hole. Because it's not just bullshit in religious sections. It's also bullshit in ideological sections. And the fundamental traits humanistically at the fundamental level are the same. And that's what I was trying to get across, but I got caught up in a crossfire. Forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, I got off topic a bit. I don't think it was deliberate. And the answer was narcissism. Because it checked boxes everything he just said. What are narcissists? Ignorant, right? Narcissists are ignorant. It's not just what you don't know, it's what you won't know, and that's a narcissist, right? That's what I was trying to get to him, but nah, he's off in Never Neverland. TikTok, or more likely Wonderland.
And they can't turn around and object to their own answers later on when they see how it works against them. Like they'll automatically dismiss all of mine. Then we correct those answers, if necessary, by whatever means of verification we can, or we use them as the basis for the next level of inquiry. So the catch is the most important rule. The rule that has tricked everyone who has failed my challenge over the last 20 years. I tell them all in advance, you cannot repeatedly ignore direct questions, or we're done. I'm under no obligation to continue, and you...
That's what narcissists do. They ignore valid questions because they don't want to deal with the truth.
Will have failed, even though the onus was entirely on me, because you can't explain anything to someone who's got their fingers in their ears, eyes closed, screaming that they can't hear you. They know what'll happen if they answer my questions. So they duck and dodge and dance and obfuscate and change the subject however they can, so that trying to prove any point becomes like nailing Jello to the wall. If you really
like a narcissist,
you believe is true,
you can make every point crystal clear.
Certainly not if understanding truth.
But trying to get through to a narcissist is like nailing Jello to a wall. That was actually said. That was actually said in Ollie Matthews' Narcissistic Resistance channel.
We've established by this point that they do. I can see the attraction of having imaginary friend like a genie who can fix any problem, even if it means occasionally making 2 + 2 = 5, on any given Sunday or whenever you need to. I saw a video by a YouTuber named Rachel Oates where she talked about how some people feel powerless and want a sense of agency. And maybe they feel like they can use the power of evoke their gods and spirits or what have you to correct whatever they need. Or maybe they can get that same feeling if they can convince themselves that they understand things better than everyone else.
Right, what he's about to say now is directly in line with narcissism. Again, do I have to keep pointing out these fucking things? Or maybe you know, but yeah, when we fucking get there. TikTok, Mr. Aron Ra, TikTok.
And maybe they're the chosen ones on occasion, but whatever, they are certainly holier than thou. And some even admit that if they didn't believe in God, They'd run around killing and raping and destroying everything just for the fun of it. That's how moral they are. Then I have to look at all of the humanists among the infidels who don't think that violence is fun. Because without any threat of posthumous punishment whatsoever, we know that unnecessarily causing pain and suffering and death is immoral by definition, meaning it's an objective standard. But what do we know? We don't have a moral compass, right? Apparently you have to believe impossible absurdities for no good reason if you're going to be a good person.
Impossible absurdities, exactly what the narcissist believes in.
Except that those who believe in absurdities will commit atrocities. I've seen many different sources showing a negative statistical correlation between morality and religious belief, where believers are more likely racist, sexist, prejudicial, xenophobic bigots.
Not just believers, but narcissists. Both non-believers and believers alike. The more narcissistic you are, the less empathy you have, the more everything he's just saying you are. Plus, with a certain group, they even blame their victims and say that they're people he's talking about, because that's what narcissists do.
And although they hate abortions, they are more likely than we are to have one.
And while he's telling truth to the narcissist, and they will never believe him, or the world and narcissists, yeah.
Talk about the sanctity of marriage, and they admit that according to their scriptures, divorce is a sin. They have a higher divorce rate than we do, and we don't even have the mythology on it. We just have a simple contract between people, and it doesn't even have to be opposite genders on every occasion. And we still have a better marriage system than they do.
Exactly, and they will deny it because they're narcissists. You with me? Down the freaking rabbit hole, Mr. Aron Ra.
Studies have shown
where
that
rabbit
people
ears.
who are raised religious and stayed religious
Smoke a
their
pipe.
entire lives are more likely to be convicted of sex crimes. And the more religious they are, the worse their offenses are, with more and younger victims, because religion is all about using that or holding a controlling aspect over weaker minds.
Exactly like
Believers
narcissists
are more
do.
likely to be violent and support violence, like corporal punishment, capital punishment, and torture of prisoners. They're far less tolerant of other religious and political views, and of course they hate homosexuals for being fabulous abominations. And they hate us, atheists, because we're ruining their game of pretend. We don't play along and give them the moral high ground like
Just like a narcissist. We're ruining the narcissist game of pretend.
the devil worshippers do. We admit that it's a game of pretend. That's why all the pretenders hate us so much. We don't buy into their delusion. And the psychiatric definition of delusion is a fixed false belief that will not change despite evidence to the contrary. However, there is a caveat that it's not considered a delusion if enough people believe it. So, I guess a disease, I guess a plague isn't a disease if there's enough sick people for it to be pandemic. And although the concept of the God virus has some merit, I don't view religion as a disease. I do see it as an addiction, though. I see religious people as being hooked on something that they think makes them happy, but is ultimately poisonous. And functional MRI scans of deeply religious people who claimed to be feeling the Spirit during moments of prayer or worship show a spike in activity in the parts of the brain associated with focused attention, with judgment and moral reasoning, and particularly the reward area of the brain. When the University of Utah published or released this study, they showed a picture of the brain scan and said, "This is your brain on God." Because the same area of the brain shows activity when having sex, when doing drugs, or when gambling, showing or suggesting that there's a common bound to these seemingly disparate behaviors that are all connected to addiction. An addicted dependence on faith prompts the believer to defend their belief as they defend themselves because their identity is erroneously intertwined with it. And that's
Or, here we go again, or the hypocritical delusion of the narcissist, which encompasses faith in a separate fraction.
why former believers are like ex-smokers. They're the loudest opponents of their own former habits. Affliction with religion no longer has to be the chronic, debilitating condition it once was. With treatment, full recovery is possible. Religion is the opiate of the masses because it is very much like an addiction. I've read deconversion stories where believers suddenly seem lost all at once because for the first time ever, they don't think that there's an all-seeing eye watching everything they do every minute of every day. How do people live like that? You know? I mean, especially in the southern United States, the most religious part of the most religious country in the Western world, yet with the highest rates of violent crime, with the lowest education, with the most use of addictive drugs, and with the highest consumption of gay porn. If your God is a judgment...
Because like narcissists, they suppress what they really want. You know, they suppress themselves to maintain their delusion. But yes, that's narcissistic. Because they bring out these statistics and they lie to themselves and say the exact opposite of what he just said. To make themselves look good, and that's what narcissists do.
Father figure who hates any sort of sexual enjoyment, how would you beat that? When could you beat that? Finally, somebody gets that joke. Of course, the fear of death is a big point for believers. They don't want to die, you know, but we all die. You know, no religion saves you from that, regardless what your religion is. All of us run equal risk of finding ourselves writhing in agony on the floor, clutching our chest, vainly straining to take that last breath. You know, religion may promise you an immortality after you die, but you know that's the only part of death that I'd actually rather avoid. You know, I'm not afraid of being dead; it's getting dead. That can be a terrifying transformation. Life is precious because it is short. And humans tend to value that which is rare. But I heard a pastor say that if he can't believe that he will be immortal and still be alive 5 billion years from now, then there's no reason to be alive now. He said that if he can't live forever, then there's no reason to prolong anyone's life or improve their life or ease their suffering. Because if he can't be immortal, then everything is meaningless. What's the point? There is no point. Shut up and get over it. This is what you get, and that's it. So you better make the best of it and enjoy it while you can, because we don't go anywhere when we die. We just shut off forever. Game over, man. You won't feel anything, know anything, be anything. It'll be just like it was eons before you were born. You remember that? Of course not. You won't remember death either. You won't be an angelic spirit looking down. You'll be monkey meat stinking up. So, this is as good as it gets right now while you live, because there's nothing and you're nothing after you die. That's the fact, and nobody likes it. The closest anyone gets to immortality is how we're remembered and what our lives meant to someone else. But people don't want to accept it. That's how it really is.
Alright, I think you get my point. Down the rabbit hole.